a monster? And what does he want with us? The story of the Antichrist has grown exponentially, chapter by chapter, century by century. His identity, forged from ancient myth and highly symbolic biblical passages, has proved so durable that the name Antichrist has been invoked by warring factions, oppressed peoples, and political rivals for many centuries. To anticipate who is now the Antichrist and what a future Antichrist might look like, you have only to consider what he has been.
Will Antichrist be an external enemy, or is he an internal enemy in the church or even within ourselves? Will Antichrist be one, or will Antichrist be many? Will Antichrist be a terrible persecutor that we should dread, or is he fundamentally a religious deceiver? In a sense, Antichrist is all of these things, and each of them in various proportions as you sketch the history of the legend over 2,000 years.
Whoever or whatever he is, belief in the Antichrist and the end of time prophecy is reaching a crescendo once again.
There's something in the air that people are fascinated with apocalyptic events and with a sense that real evil is rising, and this clash between good and evil may be reaching a cataclysmic moment.
Though always known and feared in hermetic apocalyptic circles, the mass media of today has given the Antichrist unprecedented coverage and renown.
Every generation has thought they were the last generation. And so the difference is, in this generation, we have global television networks, and we have global distribution of novels that promote those ideas. So now, when we have an idea, we, especially Christians in America, can distribute those ideas worldwide instantly.
Indeed, the Antichrist made one of his biggest incursions into the mainstream of public life with the publication in 1970 of a slim volume that popularized a fundamentalist and evangelical vision of the end of the world.
Probably the individual who most needs to be singled out is Hal Lindsey. His epical, The Late Great Planet Earth, first published in 1970, has gone through edition after edition. I think this text, more than any other, has popularized a fairly common set of expectations and fears related to the notion of the Antichrist.
He's going to be attractive, he's going to be brilliant, he's going to have supernatural intelligence and supernatural powers. He will be one of the first in history to truly be a world leader. I mean, control the world.
Blessed are the peacemakers, the Bible asserts. But Lindsey brought to the fore the notion that peacemaking will be the wicked and persuasive cover used by the Antichrist.
It's by bringing what appears to be peace that he brings them all under his spell.
Fundamentalist Christian writers Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye took on Hal Lindsey's mantle with gusto. They've written a series of novels about the coming of the Antichrist that has sold an astonishing 62 million copies since 1995.
It's the best-selling adult fiction series ever. And here we are, evangelical writers writing for a Christian publisher with an overtly evangelical story.
Although presented as fiction, the core material in the Left Behind series has become a realistic portrait for many Christians of both the second coming of Christ and the reign of his nemesis, the Antichrist.
In the Left Behind series, the Antichrist will be the head of the United Nations, a popular, peace-promising, charismatic leader from Romania who gets control of the United Nations and then moves it to the New Babylon in Iraq, where he begins to oversee a new world order.
Fictional specifics like the UN and Romania aside, the Left Behind series is in sync with a widely shared view of the Antichrist, especially in the United States.
He's going to use all the modern speak. We love everybody, everybody's good, everybody's okay, let's all join together and be one. And the average man and woman are going to look at him and say, this guy is a great guy.
Antichrist would actually bring about a peace treaty in the Middle East, and the Jews would rejoice. They would rebuild their temple in Jerusalem and experience a new revival of Jewish hegemony and security and peace in the Middle East.
At that point, according to the dispensationalist plotline, exactly 3.5 years into his reign, the Antichrist will bare his fangs.
He doesn't try to pretend to be a nice guy anymore. He just rules the world with an iron fist.
He would enter the new temple in Jerusalem, declare himself to be God, and demand worship, and put to death all those who refuse to acknowledge him. Receive his mark, the mark of the beast, on their forehead or hands. And he lets go a horrible Holocaust against them. What modern dispensationalists say would be the worst persecution in the history of the Jewish people.
Jesus, when he returns, he comes as a rescue operation, because if he didn't come at the moment he's going to come, there'd be no one left alive.
So it's at the second coming of Christ, at the end of this tribulation, that Antichrist is defeated, his forces are defeated. The surviving Jews receive Jesus as their Messiah finally, and Jesus sets up David's throne in Jerusalem.
Not surprisingly, this elaborate scenario isn't everyone's vision of the future.
It's a frankly supernatural worldview, so that rather than try to understand our own involvement in events or the ambiguities of life, it's all understood in absolute good versus evil terms.
But if the apocalyptic texts are not literal prophecy, what meaningful messages can they continue to convey to us?
I think it also does answer to something very deep in the human condition, which is the attempt to make sense out of history and to find ourselves on the side of good in the midst of so much conflict.
There is a whole dimension within ourselves, often that we're not even aware of. A shadow side that is filled with anger and revenge and all sorts of dark motives that we are often loath to acknowledge. And I think the invitation is always present to ask the question, what is the Antichrist within myself? What is the evil within?
Determining whether the Antichrist is a physical reality, some kind of metaphysical energy source, or entirely delusional, may ultimately be beyond our knowing. But what we do observe is that the Antichrist looms ever larger in the public consciousness as time passes. His ominous footfalls come closer with each passing decade.